First of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for entering a picture for the first annual NYMACC photography critique. NYMACC, in case all of you don't know, New York Metro Area Camera Council. I don't want to take up too much time, but I just do want to say that we're a brand new organization. This is our first event. So we're going to be asking you to fill out a survey at the end because we need the input of everybody to keep on improving. I think the interest is high for clubs in the tri-state area, Connecticut, New Jersey, and basically lower Hudson Valley to get together to share issues that clubs have and to put on one event a year. And we chose to do a critique because it was non-threatening, that you don't have one person coming in and out with, and one person gets something and 40 other people don't. And there's something else that I forgot to make, but we're also going to have, along with the critique, at one point I'm going to write down a number and I'm going to give it to Kathy. No, Kathy has the right to do this. I'll keep the number so I can't get it. And then we're going to have to ask people to give me the number, 2 people to give me, after I write down 2 numbers, because Hans is going to give a $50 gift certificate to 2 people in the audience. So don't let me forget to do that. And we have to do that fairly early because Elijah is going to have to leave early, and so is Arnie. So we have to do that fairly early. The first thing we're going to do is have a representative from each of the clubs that have come here today talk about their club, why it's wonderful, why if you live in that area you should be there, and if we're in a similar area, why you should join both of us, because we're both good. We're all good. We have many people from the tri-state area who have put in photographs who are unable to come today. So you're going to see several photographs by people who are not here. And we're here to see all of them to learn how we can each improve our own work. Okay, I don't want to take any more of your time because I'd rather have people talk about your own clubs. I'm going to have Elijah come because today is his annual meeting, and he wanted to make sure to come in, say hello, and talk to you about Color Camera Club of Westchester.
Thank you. I am the newly elected co-president of the Color Camera Club of Westchester. We meet Monday nights in Valhalla at the American Legion. It's a great group. We have currently 98 active members and growing. We meet between September and May of each year. At those Monday night meetings, we have a mixture of presentations, lectures, and competitions. We have both digital and print competitions. It's a great, friendly group with all ability levels from beginner to pretty advanced photographers. There's lots of opportunities for learning. We present member-led workshops. We have member-led field trips. And then, as I said, we also have competitions where a judge comes in and gives feedback on your photographs. So our website is colorcameraclub.org. And again, we meet in Valhalla at the American Legion on Monday nights.
Thank you. And I will add that all the member clubs, which is only $25 a year to be a member club. So if your club is not a member, then there's no reason why not. Okay. All the member clubs also have a link on our website. We're still developing and putting more and more information on the website, but if you don't remember what any of the other websites are, when you go onto the website, just click on it and you'll get information. And please send us more information so we can put more on the website. Arnie Kastenbaum, please come talk about ground glass.
Hi, my name is Ossining. I'm with the ground glass. Hold it up close. Is that better? Oh, wow. Okay. Ossining with the ground glass. We've been in existence for over 40 years. We meet at the Rye Art Center um, the second Wednesday of every month um, from September until May. Um, we alternate our meetings with um, member critique show and tell, which we pride ourselves on. The format is members or guests, if there's time, will bring a dozen prints, put them on easels, and we look at them, we talk about them, and it's very much like a portfolio review. We don't do contests, and so we're there to just help each other. And in alternating months, we have speakers. Um, right now, we've got a show up at the Pound Ridge Library. There's literature out there and a card if you want to get in touch with us. It's a great group, and I'd love to see you all.
Okay, we'll go to this side of the room. Ronnie Saunders, would you please come and talk about the Bronx Photographic Society?
Not good at it. Hi, I'm Veronica Saunders. Everybody calls me Ronnie. And I'm the second vice president and program chair of the Bronx Photographic Society. We meet at Fordham Prep, which is on the campus of Fordham University in the Bronx. And we have competitions and workshops, seminars. We meet from September to May. Our end of year party is in June. Um, what else can I say? Oh, that's important because we meet on Saturday. We're the only club that meets on Saturday morning, which is good, I think, but a lot of people don't want to get up early on Saturday to come to a club meeting. So we find that a little difficult pulling some new members. But we do have quite a few. We have 50 plus and very friendly club. We also have members from the Westchester Photographic Society and Park West that have come to join us. And just would like to see more of you guys maybe participating and coming to join us. Thank you.
I didn't hear you, so I'm just going to say it's every other Saturday starting at 10. Okay. And again, their link is on the website. If you did not get a survey, it's really important, even for those people leaving early, to fill this out because whatever improvements we can make for next time, we need to hear from you. Okay. So they'll be there on the way out. Okay, I'm going to go back to this side. Clark Thompson, would you please talk about Dutchess Regional Professional Photographers?
Thank you. My name is Clark Thompson. I'm the vice president. I'm the vice president of Dutchess Regional Professional Photographers. We meet on the second Thursday of every month. Our club goes from September to June up at the courtyard in Fishkill, New York. We have two print competitions: a summer and a winter, or a spring and a winter print comp. And the rest of the months, we do training and learning, things like that. We have many members from the Dutchess area. We have people from Fishkill, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, things like that. So we're the northern part of this club here, and that's all I got.
Thank you very much. And DRPP was one of the founding members. So now we're going to go on this side again. I'm going to ask Ed Lee to come talk about Park West in Manhattan.
Thank you. It's good to see you out here on a nice day after all the rain we've had. I'm the current president of Park West Camera Club. I'll be starting my 5th year in September. I was going to retire this year, but due to critical acclamation of the club, they asked me to stay on because nobody else wanted to be president. Okay, we have a lot of activities. We're one of the most active clubs in the metro New York area. Many of our members also belong to other camera clubs, professional women photographers, the Sierra Club, um, the Bronx Club, and other clubs in the 5 boroughs. We have members from Jersey, Connecticut, and Long Island, as well as the boroughs. We meet downtown at the Soho Photo Gallery at 15 White Street, which is a couple of blocks south of Canal Street. Monday nights, our meetings are at 7 o'clock. You're all welcome. If you're ever in Manhattan, you're welcome to come by and check us out. But first, you should check out our website and see if there's this interesting subject something that you might find interesting. We do have a full website and with a schedule of our activities. Um, we have member portfolios on the website. Um, just about everything that you would expect on a Camera Club website. Um, Generally, the first Monday we have a competition. We have 8 regular competitions the first Monday of the month, and then where we hire a judge and he goes over the 100 entries per month. We generally get about 60-40 mix of prints and projected digital images. Um, then in June, we have our extravaganza. We hire 3 judges, and the members are allowed to enter up to 8 images, 4 prints and 4 projected digital images, but they have to be images that were already presented during the regular competition. And you can't change anything. You can't spot a print, you can't recrop it or do anything. You have to submit them as is. And then after that competition, 2 weeks later, we have our Otto Littell dinner where we award certificates to the winners of the yearly competitions as well as the total point winners. In other words, those winners who have done the best in prints, in the categories of prints and also images. We give them certificates, and then we also give them a choice of a 64 gigabyte flash drive or SD card, so they do get something tangible. I give out President's Awards for our committee chairs for all the work that they've done during the year. Uh, like other clubs, during the rest of the month, we have a guest speaker, um, a current photographer who's either a professional or fine art photographer, and they talk about their long time work, something that they're doing currently, a new book, or a new exhibit. Um, Generally, the third meeting we have a workshop. We hire photographers to come in. We've had Tim Gray, who's the Lightroom guru. We've had John Harrington, who does speed light portraits. We've had other people come in. Also, one thing that I'm proud of is that we had a evening where we presented 3 mini workshops. One was a tabletop and macro workshop. One was digitizing and scanning your old negatives and film. Your old negatives film negatives, and slides. And the third mini workshop was portraits. We set up a backdrop with lights, and all the members had a great time. Oh, thank you. Well, I have so much else to say.
You're hired to make a whole presentation. But the bottom line is, he's, it's obviously a very active club with a lot to do. And really check out the website and everything on our website because there's the link right to it. And I thank you very, very much. Ed. Okay, we're back to this side. Jacek Kowalski. We have our New Jersey representative from Ridgewood, right? Got it right that time.
Correct. Yes, I'm Jacek Kowalski. I'm the president, next year's president of the Ridgewood Camera Club. Ridgewood is, in case you don't know, is in northern New Jersey. We are the largest camera club, one of the largest camera clubs in New Jersey. We have 150 members. We are the oldest camera club in New Jersey. We were founded in 1937. And we meet 3 times a month in Franklin Lakes, in a church in Franklin Lakes. We have all the usual goodies, competitions, field trips. Sorry. You need to put a mark on the floor. All right. Anyway, we have the usual goodies, as I say, competitions, print competitions. We have an annual with 3 judges. We have field trips. We do all the usual stuff for a camera club. So as I said, we've been at this for about 80 years now. So you'd think we would have perfected it, but photography is changing, and camera clubs have to adjust. And that's where I see the great opportunity in an organization such as this, NYMACC, for providing a resource for camera clubs to deal with these problems, because we can always improve. Thank you.
Thank you, because you gave us a lot of support and insights when you came to the meetings on putting this together and whenever we have a discussion. Everybody is always welcome. If you're interested in becoming more active in our monthly meetings, just let me know or send a note to Ron as the webmaster, and then we'll put you on the list to come to the monthly meetings, which we're trying to move around to be closer to each of the clubs. So we sometimes meet in Jersey, sometimes Connecticut, sometimes here, so that one group doesn't always have it easy and everybody else has to traipse and pay tolls. We're very cognizant of that. The other thing is I want to remind you, Steph, I'm sorry, we can't have any food in the auditorium, and I don't have tape to put a sign up, but please stand on the outside till you finish it. Because I want to be able to come back here. James was terrific and said, absolutely, we can come. And so no food and drink in the auditorium. Okay, we're up to, there you are. Robert Mans, I believe, is the last representative from a club that is here, but not all the clubs that had come in. Now, Robert is a new member of the Staten Island Camera Club. And the other guys, the Bayonne Bridge is out, the Goethals Bridge is out, and they were concerned about getting here. So he can show them what they could have done. But in the meantime, could you talk a little bit about Staten Island?
Um, as was mentioned, I'm a very new member. I barely know the names of the other people in it. I know There's Dennis Aquillo, Eric Mayer. They meet in the middle of the week, usually at 7 o'clock. I work, so I can't make the meetings. So, worst person, like I said, and not as well dressed as they are. So, I can tell you the website, which is Staten Island, well, SICC Photography Club.com, otherwise known SICK Photography Club. We're building. What can I say? Thank you very much.
Just to end by saying, of each of the clubs has a newsletter, and I just received a copy of the sick club. They are not sick. Each of the newsletters I've gotten from each of the clubs, and you should put that in your information on our website. The newsletters show what a phenomenal group of photographers who are quote unquote amateurs that we are. So I'm going to introduce our two master photographers who are going to critique. Yes. Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. I was so busy being in NYMACC, I forgot I was president of the WPS. Okay, I'm going to make it brief, because otherwise I'm going to get shot in the back. We meet every Friday night, and we're each other's dates for Friday night, because I know it's date night. We have been in existence for at least 40, 45 years. We have, like many of the other clubs, we have competitions, we have exhibits, we have presenters, we have presenters from what we call outside speakers. We've had both of these people, Jack and whatever his name is, Frank. Next time he won't threaten to kill me. I'm not done. I'm saving the best for last. Next to best. And we also have a lot of our own members, as does Park West, give a lot of presentations on various areas. We also do a lot of field trips, and from what I see, Park West also does a lot. Some of the other ones do a lot. And we do day trips, and we do one big weekend a year. It's advanced into 4 days, and we're always looking for more places to go. But that's a members only trip. So join us and come. And we're also known as the Photographic and Eating Society, because no matter what we do, we have to eat. I said every Friday. Every Friday. Every Friday. For 12 months. Okay, and what else did I forget? Okay, so we have two master photographers here who've been in this business for quite a long time, know a lot of the ins and outs, the ups and downs and sideways. And each of them has a perspective that will be helpful for all of us to learn how when they talk about the photographs. Since it's not a judge, don't feel badly or whatever, you're here to learn, and they're both very gentle. So you will hear something, you'll say, I'll try that, or I didn't know that. I'm going to just start on this side. Your left, my right, and somebody's bottom. Okay, or somebody else's top. Okay, so Jack Resnicki has been in photography, what, about 40 years? I want it. 50 years. He's done everything from shooting children to landscape, and he gives lectures and is invited literally all over the world to speak and to do presentations on several different topics. And he has become probably one of the foremost experts in the country on copyright law for photographers. And if there's anything else he wants to add, he will be happy. I will be happy to let him add that. Frank has been Frank Dispenza, Jack Lesnicki, Frank Dispenza. Frank Dispenza has been, he's now retired as a wedding photographer, but he did incredible work as a wedding photographer. He's expertise, I believe, what I know of him over and again, you can add your own, is exposures and composition. Those are the two things, if we can get that right, we can have his pictures as beautiful as both of them. He does a lot of presentations and workshops now and is quite sought after. So we're very lucky to have them both, and just going to turn the program over to them, and anything they want to add, it's fine.
I was going to mention that for many years, I was sponsored by Fuji and traveled around from state to state in Canada and Puerto Rico. So that's when I was 11, kind of younger.
And I guess on that same note, I've been one of the original Canon Explorers of Light, still am, and I was one of the original ones 24 years ago, I think it's been already. That's it. Why don't we take a look at pictures?
It's going to be a pleasure.
I'm set. Are you guys ready? Let us know if we have to move for the camera.
Okay, just tell me when you want me to change pictures.
Change? No. Well, what do you think, Frank? What do you think? We're blocking the image to the audience? How far do I? Well, listen, all you want to do is hear what I say, so you don't care if you see me or not. Oh, I guess we're panes, but not windows. So, can you see now? Okay.
We're going to judge from the hall.
Well, Frank, we now have about 10 minutes for all the pictures, so.
Could I have some binoculars, please?
Well, the first thing, and I don't know why is there a white border on the left? It looked like it wasn't cropped quite well.
Could you speak a little louder? I'm having a little trouble hearing.
How's this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering about the little white on the left, because I do something called border patrol on all my images. I look all around the edges, and that's, I think, is just a mistake in the file somehow. But so I'm going to sort of ignore that. This image is a little noisy for me. It's a little bit flat. It just doesn't have a lot of contrast. It's the type of thing where the most important part, obviously, is the glass in the middle with the upside down image, which is a nice little attraction. But I find that it's a little lower than it should be. Also, the whole image is sort of like a little flat to me. I'd like to see the edges maybe darkened up a little bit so that my eye goes right into the middle. The fact that the outer edges, especially on the right side, is a little bit light. My eye just sort of goes all over the place and should really be focused on the middle. And I think they could use a bit of contrast and a bit of burning in on the edges. The grain is a problem for me in this image, and I think it distracts quite a bit.
Okay. So I really, really agree with the darkening the edges. And the background is disturbing, it's busy, it distracts from the main object, which is the upside down image. Okay? Here, an upside down image is so nice to think about, especially with a title. Okay? So, a really nice title for this kind of unique photograph really brings it alive. So, if you darken down those white spots, even darken down the hand that leads to it, it's nice that the thumb comes out of the lower left hand corner, leading you to the subject. That was very, very well done. But if we could get the background all green or, you know, tone everything down and vignette it, jumps way up there.
Why don't we go to the next one?
Huh.
You want to start this one off?
Sure. Isn't it nice to see something unique? Yes. And when you warp everything like this, titles really can jump out at you and make it very interesting to both the judges and the viewer. Okay. It's nice that the building on the right is dark gray. We love to come in from the left and have something that stops us from leaving on the right. I would even crop the right edge closer to where you see the white up on top of the building. I would get rid of that white by cropping in, okay? And just leave the other vertical disturbance there, not the white, okay? And here's another one. You know, vignetting is always good. Sometimes it needs to be very subtle. Sometimes it needs to be darker. And when you try it, your gut feeling is always right. So the fact that it's got the wavy lines and everything, the technique was used, a title would really, really go well.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to this. The problem I have, I like the effect, and I love things that I haven't seen before. So I like this effect in the image, but the problem I'm having is my eye doesn't know where to go. I don't know visually what I should be looking at. It's going to too many places. I know the window in the bottom there with the color is probably the primary spot. And I just see too many distracting things like on the left side that just keep taking me out of the picture and keep roaming around without a central point to really look at. So for this, to me, it's where's the story? And that's one of the things I always look at a picture is what's the impact, where's the story? And in this one, well, I like the attempt at the effect that he's doing, and I like the grays and the whites. I'm just wondering if this would be better in a black and white or not, and maybe eliminating some of the left that seems to be very distracting to me in the image. What a great attempt.
Please let me add something to that. You know, you said something that I really agree with, and that's where the title...
How unusual.
I do make mistakes. But I agree, you know, where's the subject? And to me, if I had to, it's got to be the window. And that's where, if I have a terrific title talking about the effect and the viewer, the people inside, because of the effect of the photograph. Well, that would bring everybody home, and the vignetting, especially for the building on the left, brings you down to where the window is so prominent, even though there's a large area around it. And with the title, brings it right home.
Well, from my background, it's the one area I'm going to disagree with you a bit, probably during the whole thing, is I'm not really big into titles. To me, the photograph should speak for itself. And I understand a lot of people in competition, it is important, and it does finish telling a story. But as a commercial photographer, my whole background has always been about the visual, that it has to stand on its own, it has to tell its own story. And I think a title would be secondary. It's something that should enhance, but an image shouldn't depend on a title. But to me, it's a different art form. It's a different it's a different creative talent rather than photography. But we're here because we have different viewpoints, and I'm always happy to hear what you have to say on that.
Yeah. Come here for a minute, please. Hold on 1 second.
We're taking a break.
Quick.
What do you think about the black and whites in this, though, Frank? Would you think it would enhance if it was just a black and white image?
Well, what I would do, and yes, I mostly agree with you, I would make everything black and white except the window and the plants in front of it, which would tell the viewer this is where the story is.
Right. And so you would eliminate that flower pot on the other
sorry,
floor.
you got to speak louder for me.
You would eliminate the flower pot on the top. You see the one that's up above the window?
Well, after I make it black and white, and the only thing is the window, it would be obvious whether I should or should not, but most likely take it out.
The photographs, some of them do have titles, and we didn't realize that it was turned off. So we're going to put the titles on, and so if somebody decided to put a title, you'll see the title.
Could we have him announce the title when it comes up instead of print the title?
Can you do that? Can you announce the title?
It really helps.
No, I can't.
No, it either has to come up or not. That's the way this has to go, because it's all involved.
All right, okay.
Okay, Stephanie, what was the name of this? Through a French Window was the name of this one.
Say it again.
Through a French Window.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you very much. And
Thank you for that title.
If it has a title, it'll come up.
Do you want them to come up or not?
Yeah, we'll put them up.
All right, hold on.
Oh, we can see them all at once now. Now, I will say, Frank, that this being a critique, I hope everybody understands that we're assuming all the pictures are very, very nice, and that's why they've been submitted. But if the only thing we say, it's a nice picture, it's not a learning process. So for me, a critique is always about, and I hate to say it this way, but criticizing. That's where we get the word critique, and I think that's where the knowledge is. But I'm making the basic assumption that all the pictures are very good pictures on their own, and what we're looking for is ways to improve them.
All right, I only put the titles up if they're not full screen, so I'll show you the title and then I'll put it up full screen.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's the title.
The title is Water Paddlers.
Water what?
Paddlers. For those who can spell.
I would call it collision.
My turn. Okay. It's interesting. I like the three. I always like threes in an image. The first thing again is looking around the border for me. I see that flag from another boat at the bottom, and to me that's very distracting because of the color and the placement and how it looks. These days in digital, I mean, that would be something that I would look to remove pretty quickly. I like the fact that everything is in the lower thirds of the image, and I like that arrangement. I like the lines leading in. I wish there was something a little bit more in the middle to give me, as my eyes get drawn in to the middle because of the lines from the three boats. I wish that like the people were looking this way, or that little girl standing up was looking this way. I don't mind the two people on the right looking that way. Again, that just brings everything to that point. And for me, I just wish it had just a hair more story in the middle. And I don't know what that would be. Just maybe one of the outtakes or something a little bit different on this. And the other thing is I love the boats and the texture in the boats. I'd probably try and bring out a little bit more texture in processing in the boats. And as Frank and I are probably going to go throughout the show, a vignette. Very, very gentle. Now, to me, a vignette should be very subtle to where you really can't look at it and say, ah, they put a vignette on. It should just be a gentle little darkening of the edges to just bring your eyes into the middle a little bit more. But otherwise, I love the arrangement of the three boats.
Okay, very nicely said. The diagonal boats are the most interesting part. What I would do is, number one, take all the light water up on top and shade it down. Number two, this begs to be flipped horizontally. I want that diagonal boat where it is now on the left-hand side, bringing you in. There's two boats that bring you in when you flip it. And the title for this, because I'm a title person, was, we're in the wrong place. Or something to the effect that they're lost.
And that said classic nude.
What is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Naria classic pose. You want to start on this one, Frank?
Yes. Since I'm a portrait photographer, this is my wheelhouse. It's nice that when we pose anyone, whether it's a model or a wedding customer or something, that they're not flat to the camera. We have a far shoulder and a near shoulder. And how much we turn them depends on their size, their thinness, their heaviness, She's turned just enough. In fact, she's on the edge of being turned just a little bit too much. We like diagonal lines. So the arms going up like that add to the photograph. The next most crucial thing is the facial view. There's 2/3, profile, and full face. She's in a good 2/3. Her right eye does not break the skin line on the right side. The line going down from her forehead, through her nose, through her chin, that straight line is never, ever supposed to be lined up with the breastbone. She's turned one way or the other. The arch of the back for a young lady in this form is very, very nice. So being on the left side of the photograph with the abdomen and hips is great, and then lean back to the center of the photograph. Kudos to the maker. You did a good job. The lighting is from the left-hand side, which I like, because we read from left to right, and the light shadowing, because this doesn't require high contrast. She's not on a motorcycle in leather, is very well done. The left side of her nose is in shadow. The two front cheeks are lit with the main light, the forehead and the front of the chin, and then she goes to shadow. Again, well done.
A couple little issues I have, and again, I'm gonna get a little picky on some things. Generally, when I'm looking at pictures, in any case, one of the first things I do, even in my pictures, is I squint to see where the highlights and the shadows are falling. And in this case, the most important thing for me would be her face in this. And I find that the two arms are overlit for me, that I'd want, especially the one on my right, to be toned down. I would want her face to be one of the lighter elements in the picture. So I would tone down the torso a tiny bit more, especially at the very bottom. I'd tone down especially that right arm and possibly the other arm a tad more. I have a problem with her left eye on my right. It just seems to be off a little bit. The pupil seems to be going further than the other one. The other thing is that one hair below her jawbone there that seems to be a tiny bit out of place. Those little tiny things, to me, are always a little bit distracting. I've done a lot of ads for hair and things, and I know just how difficult a lot of that can be. In fact, one of the hardest jobs I ever had was just a close-up of hair for a product box. But I usually have somebody on set, luckily, who does hair and makeup, and they're always watching over my shoulders. And it's one of the things I'm always looking for is how is hair falling under somebody's chin. Otherwise, Frank, I think it's a
Well,
wonderful image.
well said about the arms. I did leave you something.
Thank you. Very generous.
And I forgot about eye position. When you're in a two-thirds view, there's only two eye positions classically. Follow your nose and don't look at the camera. Follow your nose, and the balance has got to be very, very tight. Now, if her right eye is starting to be hidden like it is in the corner, you don't move the eye position. You turn her nose 3 or 4 degrees to her left. Okay? So, good points, my friend. And that's it.
On a clear evening.
Say that again.
On a clear evening, which obviously was not taken in the last couple of weeks. Well, I'll take a look at it, and I really don't have much to say on this one. I'm just enjoying it. It's a wonderful view. Well lit. I love the blue sky. I love the hot red reflection on the right side, and the foreground that it's broken up by that wooden structure in the water. Something that would look lovely on a wall. Frank, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I mean, it's 99% there. If you look at the shoreline where the boats are, there's some really, really bright areas that draw your eye. You know, tone them down a little bit, but it's very, very well done to begin with. And the fencing in the front demands maybe something in the title. Not necessarily, you know, but think about those things. But the little bright lights that are along the shoreline could be toned down, but very, very well done. Next.
Yeah, it's really hard when a picture's there and you just have nothing to say about it. That was good. That was good. Okay, classic nude.
Okay. Again, facial view. That's not two-thirds, it's not profile, and you distort her right side of her face when you're in between profile and two-thirds. It's not flattering to the model, okay? When we have the far shoulder and weight on her left hand and force her head that far to the left, the cords in her throat jump out at you, and that's not glamorous. We always show fingers extended, and they are extended, but not in a feminine way. There's ways to pose hands. So the strain of leaning on the arm, okay, and the bent knee is not a glamour type approach. If the title indicated pain or rejection, then all of the negative things kind of add up to, you know, the title. But if it's meant to be glamorous, and I think it has, we have to kind of conform to the basic body language for people. Next.
Yeah, pretty much some of the similar things that I've been looking at. The bent knee on the chair looks like she only has one leg. And I'm always trying to be conscious of things in these types of shots that somebody doesn't look like an amputee on it. And the hand resting on the chair with the fingers apart like that, looking like little sausages is distracting. Hands are very hard. I recommend to my students sometimes to go to museums and see how sculptors and painters have dealt with hands in portraits, because I find that to be a very difficult thing for people to do. It's one of the reasons I like to deal, I like to take photographs of dancers. Dancers seem to be well versed into how to handle their hands. All the tones going all the way around, again, that little piece on the top, you know, as you submit a file, you're responsible for every little thing, so that little mistake at the top keeps taking me in. Also, the wood on the floor is neither here nor there. I'd like to see more or less, probably less. But if I was going to do anything with this, I find that this image from about the belly button up looks more interesting to me. And the rest of it seems to be taking me away from the image. And I would make this a really tight crop and go from just above or below the belly button cropped and go up and tighten in left, right, and top. And I think it's a more interesting image that way. It eliminates the hand that's bothering me and the knee, and I think the figure looks pretty good. And I sort of like the right angle that I'm getting from the elbow. To me, that's an interesting component in it.
We got a lot of prints, so we might have to move it and get a little quick. One
Sure.
more last comment. When we photograph women especially, that foot going to the floor, the ankle is bent in. Next print, please. Let's move it along a little bit.
Little Red looking for a ride. Well, it's a period piece. The problem I would have with this is the light, the dappled light on her. I'd really like to see, when I have to do something like this, I love to put the subject in shade, and I'll get like one of those pop-up 5-in-1 reflectors, and I'll get a translucent and just put it over the model. And what that's going to do is put her in a clean shade, so I'm not looking at the different light patterns on her all over. And what it does is it darkens her a little bit, which I open up for the exposure, and it lightens up the background even more, which makes the subject pop. We used to do that in fashion photos quite a bit. We would, I know some people who used to travel before those pop-up scrims and everything with a white umbrella, and we would do that on the beach. And we'd put the umbrella there, and it would make the model just pop a little bit more. I'd also like to see a little bit more of the car because I'm into cars, and that's a fascinating thing for me. Again, the hands on the hip, the way the fingers are splayed apart, I'd like to see them a little bit closer together so that they're not like four sausages.
Okay, real quick. Here's a photograph. If I was taking it, I like her pose. I'd maybe take her left arm, put it on the top of the windshield to spread it out diagonally, maybe. And then I would use off-camera flash to give her a lighting pattern. That's where you got to consider what the ambient light is, how much fill flash you're putting on, add them together and change your exposure. I think that's enough said for now. That'll be part of my program later, if there's room. Next print, please. Okay, I think
Recalling the past.
I think it's my turn.
Go ahead.
Okay. Here again, look at the facial view. Very, very important. She's turned too far to the right. The corner of her right eye is breaking the skin line, forcing her eyes over too much. Turn her nose 5 degrees towards the camera. We fix that. We could fix the hand a little bit to make it flow up the handle instead of, finger claws. Okay? And disappearing left hand in the lower thing could be changed in a couple of ways by moving the hand and getting the elbow away from the body. And let her sit tall and lean 10 degrees towards the phone, towards the middle, not in the middle of the photograph looking at you. So turn her nose 5 degrees to us, and that'll do it. Next.
Well, I have a couple things on this. To me, it would look a lot nicer if we got rid of the phone on the left. I think it's a big empty spot, and it's distracting, and it's very close to the edge. I'm not crazy about the top of her head being right at the edge of the frame. I'd either like it cropped in or to have a little space. But that's something I call a TT, terrible tangent. It's a bit distracting. I'd also probably crop in on the right a little bit. She has a beautiful elongated neck, which I really like. I like her face. The fingers on the phone, again, I would put together a little bit. Hands are very hard. And the last thing is, I think that her shirt, in this file at least, is oversaturated and is blowing out. And I'd like to see that pulled back a little bit. But
to add something real quick, because we're going to have to move along, it's getting late. If you wanted to make this a head and shoulders, the rules are always never crop at a joint like the elbow. 1/3 down from the shoulder would make a nice head and shoulders. Next.
This is Minnewaska Lake Path Autumn. No, we know where we are. I look at this, and again, to me, it's almost two separate pictures. The left side really, photographically for me, isn't really doing much for me. Everything that starts in the middle with the colorful lights, flowers, the leaves, the colorful leaves, and the path on the right, where if it was a vertical and it was just that one single vertical tree, so I would crop that middle tree out. And I think it's a wonderful picture on the right. I would also just crop in slightly on the top where I see a little bit of sky, because to me, again, things like that to me are distracting. I would crop into it. And I think it almost looks like a watercolor painting on the right side. But the left side to me is just distracting and blah and bland and really doesn't do anything for me. But the right I think would make a fantastic print.
Okay, so either crop out the water or crop out the path. I would crop out the path, moving that all the way to the right and show more of the water for balance, having the heavier colors and trees on the right, stopping you from leaving. Next print.
Bad girls get presents too. You can read it on the shirt. That's the title of the piece.
Good, she's making a statement. What I don't like static. You know, both hands are, every time you have hands that are horizontal, form a horizontal line or a vertical line, that becomes static. So what I would have her do maybe is keep her hand on her left knee and then put her right hand out and stretch it to the ground and have her diagonal, okay? Everything like that makes it static, if you know what I mean. Notice that the line going down from her forehead through the nose lines up with the breastbone. We need a far shoulder, a near shoulder, turn slightly, not a lot. Far shoulder, a near shoulder, and the back shoulder should be low, which is her right shoulder. So if she leans to her right and gives me a diagonal thing and turn her right shoulder back, she's no longer lined up with her breastbone, and she takes on a feminine composition of a curve instead of static. Next.
This one, to me, a lot of this is about the lighting. I think it's just a bit flat. Again, I like to squint looking at pictures to see where the tones are, and the brightest tone is in her socks. So I think to me that's a bit distracting, along with the hands. Also, if you have somebody in their hands for that position that long, you see the veins on our left, her right hand. Sometimes we have to have models put their hands up to let the blood drain a little bit, or we have to remove that later on in post-processing. The one thing I do like is the head position. A model like this, I like when their head is down slightly, because what it does is it creates the white underneath the iris of her eye and makes her eyes pop out a little bit. And that's something I do like. But a lot of the little things, I like the way the tones are going in the carpet, making a triangle into her head. But overall, the lighting to me is still just not quite there.
Do you know how many prints we got left? How many? I can't hear.
We got a bunch. We can just keep going.
Yeah, we got.
We haven't been doing this for maybe a half hour.
The place closes at 4 o'clock. We're not going along quick enough.
Well, I think it's interesting stuff.
Very good. Keep going.
This is complicated relationship. I really love the tones in this, and I love what's going on. There's just a couple distracting things for me. The middle of the image to me is just fantastic. The tonal range I really like for the subject and what they're doing. I like the way the arms and everything are going. The bottom of the foot on the left to me is a bit distracting, and it's taking me out of the picture and not an interesting thing. Other than that, I love this because it's something I haven't seen before. I think it's done very well, and I enjoy seeing this. I like seeing things I haven't seen before. Other than that foot, I think it's wonderful.
Because of the title, the foot is not very attractive, and it belongs in the photograph. I'd hate to cut it off at the ankle or the calf. The hands being awkward and tight, and that shows the drama and the what the photographer were going for, and that title brings it home. The lighting is wonderful, giving it a highlights and shadows in that third dimension. It's very well done. Next.
Buick to the future.
I think I start with this one. The
Go ahead.
sad, right? No?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
The sad part about this picture is I bought it when it was new. And I'm into old cars, and boy, what a nice rendition. Was there a title to this?
Yes, Buick to the future.
Ah, very good, very good. I like the treatment. I mean, when it's old and you make it different, it really goes along with the time and the era. The only thing I would suggest, and this is a matter of opinion, it may not work. I would try a 2/3 view of the photograph instead of straight on. You know what I mean by 2/3. Go to one corner and photograph it. You see the front and the side, and then decide which one is best for competition. It might be this one, but take different views. I would like to tone down the grass and everything back there, and just a little bit of vignette. You got yourself a winner. Very, very well done.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on this. I think it's a wonderful image. The only thing I would have changed to do something different is the Buick in the center. I wouldn't have given that effect to. I would have just left that to be clean and straight. Couple other little minor things. I'm wondering if it would have looked better shooting slightly higher up and eliminating the background, but I like the green background back there. So that's just my thought process on this. The only thing I would change is just that Buick in the center. I'd like it clean so I could read it very quickly.
I'm not sure I understand. You wanted to straighten the Buick sign?
No, not straighten it, not put that effect on it.
I see, I see.
So that,
Okay.
so that it would be
Yes,
more
yes,
crisp
yes,
and clean.
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Love triangle. This one to me doesn't work because of again, if you squint, it's the light is just all over the place, and to me, it just isn't talking to me. It's just way too light at the bottom, too dark at the top. Her face is too dark. There's a bad light on her nose that's distracting. The center part of this picture is the three of them in the center, and if I crop out the body of the dog about midway through and crop out the little boy up until just below his shoulder and just make it the three of them together, to me that looks really good. I mean, seeing the soles of his sneakers, the bottle in the center, the dog, is the texture on him is the most interesting part, but that center part in her face should be more central. She should be a lot lighter than that. I think the exposure is off. I wouldn't mind seeing some of it blown out a little bit more, but that clean bottom on the ground is just distracting against the dark black background. I think it's a wonderful attempt at a storytelling, but I think because of the light that you're facing on this, that it just doesn't hold together as well as it should.
Well said, well said. I'd just like to add one more thing real quick. Yeah, love triangle, that's what I mean by a title that brings it home. Try to avoid this. Never have two heads vertically over each other. If we move the boy back and lean in a little bit so he's not directly vertical under his mother, we have a little better composition. Everything's been well said. Thank you. Next print.
101 years in style. I just love her blue hair. I think that's wonderful. It I'm just trying to look to see what I could say about this. I wish she didn't have that rag in her hand. I like her hand hanging over the rail, and I like the shawl with the red at the bottom and the red there. But I'm really wondering if this isn't just a portrait, if it isn't cropped really really tight. This is something that I would probably um, try and accentuate her face, her color of her hair, the background that she's against works well. Um, I like the way her arms are and brings you up into her face. Um, that's about it for me, Frank.
Boy, very, very, very interesting. I would have named this I Remember When. And anytime you can get a subject with this much interest, it is really, really makes a nice portrait. I love the fact that the right arm is diagonal. We could even move the left hand slightly to the left a little bit. And remember eye positioning. She's not following her nose. She's not in a complete full face. She should be looking at you in the camera and move her nose to the right about 5 degrees. You might have to, you know, direct her a little bit. But the old towel and the old hands and just very, very nicely, very nice, interesting portrait.
Yeah, I think if this was me, I would try and interact and communicate, even if I don't speak the language, which happens very often. It's always nice to smile and look and sometimes show things in your camera and take a picture and shoot. And I've done that. And I think interaction with the subject and having them look at the camera would have definitely helped.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I want that expression. I want that expression. I just want her to look at you in the camera. Next.
This is titled Wings.
Who went first on the last one?
I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. Frankly, either one of us can go.
Diagonal lines, diagonal lines, diagonal lines make it interesting, very interesting. We have some side light that causes highlights and shadows, which gives that third dimension. Her left hand is interesting and flows quite a bit. The right hand, at least we could have took on her right hand, her index finger, and pointed it out and bent it and tried to soften the curls in the knuckles. But from the shoulders down, even though it's very symmetrical, it should be symmetrical. And with the right title, Wings, okay, yes, does a very nice job. Yeah, there's things we can do. Tone down a little bit here, tone down a little bit there. But I think we should move along, and you go.
Yeah, I like the graphics of this. The only things I would do is I think the background's too much in focus. It's again, I think that she blends into the background, including the texture of the red and everything else. To me, this is something that I would shoot with a more open aperture and try and separate her from the background. I know that there's a hot light up above her head. I would have preferred if it was lowered down a little bit. And it seems to be that there's a yellow light on our right hand. The other thing with doing a pose like this is making sure that the arm doesn't do that little break. It looks like the arm is broken. I'd like to see the elbow bent ever so slightly to be a more feminine type of look rather than that break. Also, the back of it now, as I look at it, is a little too tense. I'm seeing just a little too much. And it should be smooth and elegant, and I think it's just missing on that. But overall, I think it's a wonderful graphic.
Not to disagree, but real quick. I'd like to see the elbows bent, but I think I prefer them because of the lines of the cloth to be straight. But anyway, that's just my opinion.
I think you can straighten it by just giving it that slight little bend, but that's
Okay.
that's overextended for me.
Okay, all right.
The title of this is Tuscany 2017. It's just missing a couple things for me here. Again, I like the tones in the lower part, and I know photographers like to include, a lot in it, but that top sky part to me is very distracting tonal-wise in this, and I would crop that out. Also, the wheel in front is distracting to me and is taking away from it. I like repeated patterns, and I like the fact sometimes that there's a round wheel here and another wheel there, but in this case, the wheel in front is distracting to me, and the wheel on the right is cropped really, really tight, that same terrible tangent. I like the bottles. I'm seeing a leaf coming up there into one of the bottles. If I was there, I would have removed that one weed on the left. And I think there's a story there with the bottles. I just think it needed to be in a different position. I do like the tones all the way on that bottom part of the image.
Real quick, I would like to see this deeper in contrast. Bring out the blacks, make it a little more contrast. I wish I knew what was in the bottles. If it's alcohol, I could use a drink right now. If it's water, was there a title to this?
Tuscany, 2017.
Okay, Tuscany. So I'll assume it's wine. I would call it drink up. Go ahead, next.
Mount St. Helen Recovering.
Okay, the title brings you to the mountain. So much foreground, not enough mountain. Now, how do you fix that? Do you crop away the foreground? Not necessarily. You see, let's say this is done with a, I don't know, 75 or 100 millimeter lens. Who knows? If you back up and put a 300 millimeter lens on your camera and crop it exactly the same way, everything in the foreground will be a lot smaller and the mountain will be 2.5 times bigger. So you back up and use your eye until the mountain and the foreground is in your wheelhouse that you like. Then zoom to crop. It's the thing that we forget all the time. Long lens, background gets bigger. Wide angle lens, background gets smaller compared to the foreground. Very powerful and overlooked. Next.
There's a couple of things on this. One is the tonal range on this. I mean, to me, the sky is washed out. The mountain is a muddy gray. It needs a lot more contrast in it to really make it pop for a landscape. Also, that outcropping on the left is distracting to me. I think what I would have done is just shoot this from a lower angle so that the flowers would be closer to the mountain, so that it would bring them up into that middle ground a little bit more. The outcropping rock on the left seems to be just as important as the mountain itself. And I think the story you're trying to tell is the mountain and the flowers for its Mount St. Helens coming back to life. So I would get down really low and shoot through the flowers to get them much closer to the mountain. I'd also probably do it with a polarizer lens to get that sky to really pop a lot more.
Try cropping the flowers and the rock all the way out. Compare the two pictures. This one might be the better one.
Thank you. Canoodling is what this is.
Again, please.
Canoodling. You know canoodling. You know, a little boat with a paddle and you canoodle. I absolutely love this one. I think this is wonderful. I think it's cropped really tight. If anything, I'd probably pull out a little more texture, and I'd probably do a darkening of the upper left a tiny bit. But I love the image. I love the tightness of it. I love these birds. It just looks wonderful to me.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, a little more contrast, maybe a little bit vignetting very, very slightly, and a title like, "You know who texted me?" So, very nicely done. In fact, I would fill in the black area in the top right-hand corner with rock. It gets distracting. I call it a snippet that doesn't go with the rest of the texture. Very, very nicely done storytelling. Next.
I Got It is the title of this. I love sports shots. I mean, it's a great caught moment. I like the way the ball is lit up and the look on his face. Again, I look at tones on this, and I would want to darken up the bottom, if not even crop out a little bit more at the bottom, And then the question is, does the umpire, excuse me, not empire, the umpire really add to this picture? I would have no problem cropping this mid-thigh to really get all the impact, because the story is his face and the ball. You know, I really wish the guy wasn't behind him. That's back there. I would probably in post darken that guy up in at the top, and maybe even crop into him too. I mean, I love the texture of the fence, the double fence behind him. But everything to me in the story on this is that little boy catching it, the look on his face, the ball there, and the left side to me is just distracting.
Real quick, I would leave them full length. And for competition, we always, and there's people in the photograph, we always need direction of light on the face for competition. Okay? So there are ways in Photoshop to add light coming and light the face slightly correctly. And this has a lot of storytelling. I got it. It's a very good action. Look at the expression on his face. Well done. Lighting on the face makes it jump a whole lot for competition.
Glide to first. I'll start on this one too. I sort of like this. There's a bunch of little tiny things I would do. I would really want to emphasize the young lady gliding into, I think it's a young lady, gliding into first there. I like the guys on the right. It's great gestures. You know, waiting for the ball and everybody else, including the guy all the way on the far right. I would want to accentuate that person in the air a little bit more. I'm wondering if I wouldn't darken up the background of the three boys on the left a little bit more, try to brighten her up a little bit. The phone line that's going through the back, I would eliminate in post. And again, the tree line above that has light areas, I would try and get rid of, either fill them in or crop them down. But I would try and look to see what I can do to make her the most prominently lit part of the image to pop out. But I love the caught moment.
Was there a title to this?
Yes, there was. Gliding into first.
Okay.
Glide to first.
Okay, well, decent. I would have said ladies first, but I love the action. Look at the fact that her arms are extended diagonally, her knees are diagonally, she's in motion. I mean, everybody has the emotion that goes along with the picture. And if anything is important to the technical part or the cropping or the background, is those subjects with their expressions that highlight the emotion in the photograph. Emotion, emotion, emotion. Well done.
The title of this is I Think I Can. You want to grab this to start?
Oh, sure. It's nice. The emotion is nice. He's about to shoot, and the title says he's wishing for what's coming, which is good. I would have probably taken a second shot if he made it, and to see what the expression is. But I got to judge what I say. I love the environment. All the people watching on the side. You know, that's a cityscape, if there ever was one. And the graffiti on the wall makes it happen. The way they're dressed and the environment they're in. I would, of course, darken the building down, vignette it so it draws your eye to him, and everything in the back is darkened, but yet you can see it. It's got to be there, but not that prominent. Other than that, very, very nice. His right arm is hot. You darken those things out.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said on that. I would try and tighten it up again a little bit. I'd crop it to get rid of the guy sitting on the all the way on the right side, just because it's distracting. I like the other guy standing there looking back at him. And yeah, I would play with the tones on this. I might even crop from the top down a little bit, because the only thing I really need to see is that basket. And I think there's a lot of distracting visual up on top for me. But great moment, and yeah, I would try and rework the tones so that he would just pop a little bit more. But wonderful.
Well done. There's just one thing I want to add. I wouldn't crop into the basket, okay?
No, not into the basket, but some of the blue sky and the stuff above. If you bring your hand down to just above the top of the rim, I think it just tightens it up where the some of the metal
I
work and
understand, and
everything.
that's what I was getting to. And anytime we have something that's that prominent, you know, the basket and the frame, and you don't show much of the frame, just the basket, it becomes unnerving. It becomes like a snippet. It's a big part of the photograph.
I would disagree a bit on that. To me, sometimes you don't have to see the whole thing to see what it is.
That's why we have two judges. There's
That's
nothing
exactly
wrong
right.
Nothing wrong with a disagreement.
I-
In fact, it's educational.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So I would just vignette a lot more. Go ahead, next.
The title of this is Scene? Sensi? Hey, English is a second language for me, so I'll take whatever help I can get from the audience. Senescence? Senescence? Okay. I like this a lot. I like the framing of it. I like the picture within a picture type of thing, the framing. The texture, I'd probably, the only thing I would do is just try and bring out a little more texture with something like clarity, which is mid-tone, contrast. But I'd be very, very careful because the leaves on the right side of that, I'd want to make sure don't get lost. I want to make sure that they would hold all that light. But overall, I really like this image.
I would crop the right side to the molding, show more of the left side, darken down the glass in the foreground, which makes the background more prominent. In other words, the glass around the window, darken it down. And, you know, this begs for a title with the broken windows and the leaves that bring it home to the average viewer. Nicely done. Next.
The title of this is Evening Sets In. Take it away, Frank.
Wow, so many things going on that demand your attention and title. I've got railroad tracks that look like they've been well abused. We got a tank in the foreground, and we got an interesting background with cranes. So here's a picture that doesn't draw your eye to any one thing, but do all of the elements go together? Not necessarily. I would make my statement with the railroad. I would have taken a different angle and make the railroad diagonal in the photograph and let the background just be supporting nothing. You know, in other words, doesn't grab your attention. And talk about the old tank and the tracks, which I think are the subject of past. Okay, so get me away from the background with your techniques in Photoshop. Give me a diagonal railroad track and the tank in the railroad track and the boat in the background there. Tell the story. Next.
Yeah, my eye goes all over the place here. I don't know what the story is. There's dramatic sky. Is it all of that? And there's a lot of compositional problems I have with this. It has a very nice horizontal in the middle, but then the tracks on the left and the fence on the left takes me away with the cranes, and then there's that clouds in the sky in the middle, and the tonal range is also very flat on this. So I really don't know where to look. It's just a lot of different things, and I just don't get a feeling. The tones in this one. This one just doesn't work for me. Where this one is Evening Sets In.
This is the same paper.
Same maker, yeah, and it looks like the same area shot
wait a minute, wait a
separately.
minute. What was that, Ron?
It's the same maker and.
We shouldn't say that in a competition.
Pardon me?
We
Well,
shouldn't
this
say
isn't,
that.
this isn't a competition,
Well,
this is just
We
a
shouldn't
critique.
say that in a critique.
Yeah.
The sky is just a middle gray, and I think it should have more drama in the sky, in the tonal range. I like the textures on this. I think this tells a little bit more. I like all the man-made things in this, and the only thing distracting to me actually is that one tree all the way on the left, where I would crop that out. And to me, it just tightens up the whole picture for me at that point. I think it just needs a lot of tonal work on this. I think the water, it blows out a little bit too much, and the sky and the grays and the blacks aren't there. It should have a deeper DMAX, and the grays should have a lot more contrast and detail in it.
The wonderful parts of this photograph is we know where to look. The boat is in the right position. Very, very nice position. The wave created by the boat is a diagonal line from the left-hand side, and it's easy to get into the photograph. Look on the left-hand side, the waterway coming in. That's good competition. Good composition. Simplicity here. There's not a lot that draws your attention. The bridge is a nice attribute. It doesn't distract you. I like the gray sky because it doesn't attract me. It's the boat heading for the bridge and the wave that leads to the boat, the subject. I think the simplicity that's built in here is very, very well done. Yeah, take out the tree, maybe darken that bright area between the two clouds in the middle. But the boat, its action and its heading and it's in the right position makes all the difference in the world. Well done.
This is A Serenity of Buddhas. Well, I guess I'll start on this one. I like this. I like the strong leading line. I like the Buddhas. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would say. I like the fact that it's off-centered to the right a little bit. I probably would have tried to center it directly. That one base on the left side, because it's so bright, is a little bit distracting to me. And so the question of where do you crop these things and what isn't distracting. I probably would like to see a little more tone on the roof, on the upper part of it. And I would probably play with the tones a little bit in this, but I like it overall. I'm a big fan of strong leading lines in an image.
Symmetrical simplicity in a busy photograph and pull it off is very, very well done. It's always interesting when you draw your eye down the middle and there's interesting things. Look at the lighting on the face of each one of the Buddhas. For critique, competition, or whatever you want to call it, that's the way it's done. Very, very nice. Even if you had to do nothing to the photograph except take it, it's well done. Next.
The title is Celeste at Alabama Hills. You want to start this one, Frank? Celeste at Alabama Hills.
Oh. I think we could have a title that depicts what she's about to do or the chances that she's taken rather than who knows her name. So let's look at it. From a glamour standpoint, it's we're shooting almost into the shoulder from the side, which is not the most attractive view for the female. That doesn't mean the photographer could have changed his permission without losing his life. But I hope they put her in there on Photoshop, because if she climbed down there, I give her a lot of credit. But the fact that her legs are straight and next to each other is a little stagnant from the waist down. The fact that her arms are diagonal and she's arched back like that with her face up towards the sky is very, very well done. If she could, one leg a little bit back, maybe, flatter on the towards the top of the rock would separate her feet a little bit and make her from a glamour position or a body position much more interesting. But well done. The sky is diagonal lines. The vertical rocks, in contrast to that, is very, very nicely done. Again, simplicity and impact. You've got it. Nothing distracting, storytelling, and nicely done.
Yeah, not much to say. I think this is very well done. The only thing that I would do is I like the way she blends into the rocks, and I would probably just tone down her just a tiny bit to sort of hide her into the rocks a little bit more, sort of to be like you see the scene first, and then you have to study it a little bit to see her pop out. But overall, just well done. Gate hinge. Well, the texture in this is really good. Um, I just, to me, for this, it just doesn't have an impact that I like to see in images. Maybe pull out a little more texture, especially on the right side. Tone it down a little bit on the white on the right. The nails in that top part are distracting to me a little bit, but I probably need to see a little more richness in the tones for this type of an image that really, really pop, and the blacks are really, really black. Things like this, I tend to, if I'm doing, I tend to underexpose them quite a bit to really get some of the darks to really, really pop and get a lot of texture in the whites. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with this picture. It's just not one of the type of images that speak to me.
Okay. When we have a print like this, we want to make it as simple as possible, and there's nothing else to look at except the subject, which is the hinge, which has character. Thank God we have overhead lighting that casts a shadow highlight the shadow from top to bottom. Yes, get rid of everything on top there. All you want to see is the wood, even if you clone the wood to the top third or the top piece in the photograph, that horizontal piece of wood. Okay? And then darken everything around it. Darken all the wood. Okay? And make that hinge even more contrast there, and make the texture in the wood more contrast there in Photoshop. You bring out that and take out the things that are distracting you and have a title about that block, that hinge. That's not a modern day hinge. That's a fortress. Okay? So with the right title and the texture and the darkening, I think you got to win them.
Yeah, the interesting thing too that I didn't see before, it looks like the hinge went over something that was there before, because there's a pattern on the left part of the hinge there that almost looks like an arrow, and then weathered wood behind it.
Good thought.
And to me, I wonder if there's more of a story there
good thought.
to it, where while you're getting the whole hinge in, I wonder if just that one part of older and newer and weathering is a little more interesting. And to me, that's something that's a little more intriguing in the shot.
Good point. I didn't notice it. And, in Photoshop, if you make that more prevalent, so you see the outline of the old and the new, and the new is not that new, that would be an interesting comment title. Very good.
The proposal.
Is that the way it's done today?
Well, it looks like after the proposal.
Oh, okay.
Or there's something, maybe it's a picture of the ring in the on the phone. Yeah, that's a good point. You don't know what he's proposing, is what somebody said, which is a good point. The thing with this is, I think it needs to be shot with a much longer lens at a wider aperture because the people blend into the background and they should be popping out of it. And it's not an interesting background. You know, it's done with no leaves on the ground, which isn't a problem, but with a long lens at a wide aperture, you can really get just a nice smooth background where they pop out of it a little bit more. I like the emotion. I like the look on her face. I wish he was smiling a little bit more, or maybe looking back at her, not at the phone. But that would be all I would really say on this one.
Well, it's never nice to crop at the waist. So either tighten the crop there. Oh, okay. It's very, very storytelling. I like the fact that the two heads are not vertical of each other. The expression on his face and her face kind of tell the story. You know what they're looking at. So I would move her or him, separate just a couple of more degrees. He's too much in line with her. I'm talking a little bit. Move him to the left or move her to the right, and then don't crop at the waist. And it's been said. Thank you.
NYC downtown.
Wow. NYC downtown. And I'm looking at something that has wings. And why that wouldn't be in the title, Wings of the City or something. Because the subject is those wings. I can't get away with it. I would take out the lamppost that cut into the wings. Everything else, you know, darken the sky a little bit, bring down the brightness of the towers in the back, give me a little more bounce on the wings as far as contrast. And I wouldn't vignette this because it would cut into the wings, but darken that sky and make the storytelling about what obviously is the subject. Next.
I would agree with everything you've said. So I think we can go on to the next one. This is who's the flairist of them all? I like this. It's interesting. I like it, it's the type of thing where there's two parts of this image, but I sort of like it. I like the way that the whatever that is, the lines on the left are reflecting the edges of the right. I like the bird in the dark. Looking at the reflection, the tonal on it. There's just one dark area on the lower left that we'll try and get rid of. Other than that, I think it's a fun picture, something I haven't seen. And usually I'm not a big fan of city bird pictures like this, but I think this really works on a bunch of different levels. I like the tones and the textures.
Okay. I like the lines in the water are not distracting, even though they take up a big part of the photograph. That's what I like about it, is the simplicity. Okay? And the fact that there's a reflection. I mean, supposing the title is, Will You Marry Me? The bird thinks the other bird is really, really cute. But the simplicity, look at it. There's nothing except the bright water could be toned down, you know, between the lines and the shoreline. The shoreline makes a wonderful block not to get out of the photograph. So simplicity and impact, which it has, always works.
Oculus ribs. That's the building downtown. That's what this is known as, the Oculus. It's a subway station in Lower Manhattan. I look at this, and the lower part of this is where I have a problem. The one guy there and the piece of somebody else there just really don't add to anything there. Also, there's three letters at the bottom, C-O-R. Anytime you have words or letters in a photograph, you're attracted to them and you're going to see them. So I think just cropping that guy out, simply just going above his head, is where the image is. And in that case, I really like it. I like the way the tones go. I like the lines in it. I like the building centered in the middle there. I like the fact that there's reflections and things are going all over the place on the top part, but that whole bottom part, from that guy down, is just distracting to me. I would, where those round little lights in a row at the bottom are, I would crop just above those, and then I would get rid of that little white spot on the up about a third on the right. That's just a little square on the top of a building. I would darken that up, and I think it's a wonderful shot.
Okay, I agree with most everything. Well done. But here's my point. We have lines in a building, and giving me the name of the building doesn't do anything. You know, that's a title that we could do without. But if you gave me a title and took out the man, that the piece of the man that's in there on the left, and leave the man and bring him out a little bit, even though he's dark and everything, that's your subject. The leading lines in a building are just the background, and he's the storytelling. You give me a title about him, whether he's lost, confused, homeless, whatever. He's the subject. The name of the building, if I'm from Arizona and you give me that title, what does that mean?
Well, this is at one point where the titles to me is distracting, and that I don't think it needs a title. I think it's a visual, and the lines and the light and the way the lights play, especially on the top on this building, I think is the whole story. And I think you're really getting lost in a lot of the titles. And this one in particular, I have to say, it's not about a title. It's about the visual to me.
And the visual to me says he's the important part of the photograph. That's why we have two judges. You're not wrong.
Absolutely.
We just disagree. It's okay.
She said yes.
There you go.
You want to start on this one, Frank, or should I?
Yes.
Give
She
it a
said
go.
yes. It's too bad the cameraman didn't take a higher position, just about 15 degrees higher, so we don't cut him off at the ear. Next, if I was going to have the clothing there, I would spread it out diagonally so it doesn't interfere with the face, okay? The bright streak going down the water could be toned down. I think the landscape is not distracting. I think the title is good. Now, here's another thing. When two people kiss, you take the male and you tip his head toward the camera more. You take the female and you tip her head slightly away. Here they're slightly tipped, but a little more makes it interesting and classical. Just my point of view. Up to you, my friend.
I don't think this works at all. I think you really can't see any emotion or any gesture or anything with the people. The clothes are very distracting. The hat, it's two heads butting together. There's just no emotional appeal. The upper part of the picture is completely different. The lighting is different, the light, the look, everything else is different, and it's vastly separated away. It's two separate pictures. Now, the top part is more interesting, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the light that I'm seeing is interesting. And even the light on Jane's Carousel that I see in the distance is an interesting story. But as a whole, this picture just falls short is telling any kind of story for me. It's just not there. The title of this is Knock Your Block Off. Well, I like the tonal range in this. I like the background lights and the way it looks. The reds in this are blown out a little bit. It's a great caught moment. It doesn't have an impact to me, and I don't know why. This one's a little puzzling to me. This is an image that has, I think, all the right elements. It's a little bit heavy on the left and a little blank on the right, a tiny bit. But that's a minor thing. I'm just trying to see why this image just isn't working for me, and I don't know why. I don't see many things wrong with it. but it's just lacking that one little element for some reason. Can you pull it out, Frank?
Well, I hate to keep going back to titles, but if we don't have a title for this, it's okay.
We do have a title.
I know. And what was it again?
I think it was Knock Your Block Off.
Okay. That kind of fits the action. We have at least one face where we see anger. There's motion. They're not standing straight up and down. They're in motion. Really, there's nothing distracting except in the lower left-hand corner, the little letters going down the little lower left-hand corner on the ropes. Could be taken out, but that's minor. The crosshatch lighting in the background makes it interesting, even though it's a little distracting. But the trick is, what's wrong or right with it is not too much to be said. Is it a competition print? Yeah, we're here for critique. It's not a competition. And so we learn. That's all I got to say about it. I can't improve it. Next.
Beach Bird. You want to start or should I? I'll start on this then. Um, the first and most important thing is the bird's out of focus. If you're doing wildlife or things like this, you really, really have to nail the focus. And the eye and the bird is just out of focus. It's blending in. The bird is camouflaged in so much it doesn't pop out if it was in focus. If the bird was in sharp focus, I'd really want to see, the texture of the feathers, and I'd want to crop in because there's a lot of distracting elements all around it that's taking me again away from what should be the center part of the image, which would be the bird.
Well, sir, there's nothing more to say about an image that's out of focus, except my title would be He Stood Me Up.
Next. Umbrella Dream. I think it's a nice abstract. It's been worked on and manipulated afterwards, and it's just a series of colors and tones. I like the placement. I think it works very well. I like the combination of colors. I like the diagonal lines. I like the center focus going into that white thing in the center, and would be a nice piece to have on somebody's wall. Looks like something that might even show up in a hotel.
Yeah, the diagonal lines are very powerful. We point to a subject, and if that's the subject, I would say something like, bring it on, Mother Nature.
Mother Nature.
Mother Nature, rain, storm, hail.
I think you're reaching for that one.
Way up there.
Next
I'm
one.
coming down.
Okay. Newark Basilica. Wow. I love this. I like the tonal range. Now, this is something where there's a lot of things for my eyes to go all around, and the textures work. This is something where usually I like a center point and what's the story, but this is the type of image that my eyes just enjoy going around and seeing things, and I think it's symmetrical and well done, and I like the tonal range, and it just this is an image where instead of looking at anything individual altogether, it just has a lot of impact and just has a big pow right in your eye. Love it.
This is a wonderful, wonderful angle, image, texture. You could even bring out the texture and make it a little more pop, but that's in the eyes of the viewer. How much, okay? If I had a print like this and I was going to put it in that word I can't use, this is only a critique. But if I was going to put it in that other category thing, wouldn't it be something if we had a bride that was 50% translucent walking down the aisle, and then a title that brings this all together? You have a church with no place to rest your eyes. It's beautiful, but is it enough? It's a background, a wonderful setting for storytelling. So you got a wonderful setting, which is a hard part to do, but you need something that makes it story. That's my opinion. Thank you.
On your mark, get set, go.
Yes, love the title. Very nice. Action. You know what it's all about. You know what the subject is. It's easy to understand. I don't mind the guy in the background. That's the way tracks are. He might have been the flagman. I guess he is. And, you know, maybe a little vignetting to darken down the top and the sides, especially that white railing going from left to right. If we can darken that down so it doesn't distract you, I think you got an action photograph with impact and storytelling. Next.
I don't have much to say on this one. It just, it's a nice image. Everything's fine. The person in the background distracts for me a bit. And some of the extra lettering behind him also just distracts a little bit more. It's really about that car in the front and the angle that it's set up at. But I'd just like to see a little bit more on something like this. Next. Lower Manhattan from Dumbo. Well, I guess I'll start on this too. To me, I really like it. It's late in the day. I really think the sky needs more work. It needs a more dramatic look to the sky for this. I like all the beams on the bottom. The trees on the right just are distracting for me. This is really about downtown Manhattan, and I think it's about the buildings. And that tree line on the right just takes me out of the picture. When I go there, it just seems incongruous to everything else that I'm looking at. I think it should be a graphic about the pylons, the structures in the front and the background. I probably want to see a little more texture in it, and I think the tonal range needs to pop more on this. I'd like to see darker in the sky and a little more contrast, I think, in the buildings.
That's been well said. But we got to look at the photograph. To me, is the subject the buildings in the background, or the 200 pilings that are right on your nose? It's the pilings. So the storytelling has got to be how these pilings and the city, something about their coexistence. Okay, you don't put them in the foreground and then ignore them by referring to the buildings. Okay, that's just my opinion. It's wonderful that we have a leading line coming from the lower left into the photograph that leads you into the photograph. So keep it in mind. What's your subject? What's the storyline? And where's the impact? Next.
Oh, just before you leave, the other thing I would do too is all the way on the left, you see how the buildings end? If we get to show our stuff later on, I'll tell you a lot of things like that. I'd rather crop into the buildings and let your mind continue with the row of buildings going across. When you show the end like that, it ends it. And I think sometimes in photographs, and it goes against what I think a lot of photographers tend to do, but if you crop into those buildings on the left rather than having it end and having the sky, then the entire image continues beyond. Prosperina Rising.
Isn't she lovely would be my thing. Very nice. We got the legs separated somehow. I maybe wouldn't have crossed them, but separated is better than standing vertically side by side. It's a good view of the body, how much it's turned. We have a far shoulder and a near shoulder. The profile is correct. We don't see part of her left eye hanging on top of her nose. It's always okay to show an eyelash, but never the eyelid. So the turn of the body being more square to the camera from the waist down, and then the turn on top is very nicely done. Okay? Diagonal lines for the arms, nicely done. We can darken the green areas in the background to make her more stand out instead of being so distracting. And the fact that she's got two walls on either side of her, simplicity brings you right to her, you can't miss. It's a shame she doesn't get closer to the background wall where the light from behind the building would give her better profile lighting. Okay? We have a little profile lighting, highlights on the cheek and shadow. We need just a little more. In fact, you could probably boost that up in Photoshop. Well done. Next.
I just like this all over. I wouldn't agree with the more light on the face. I think that looks really nice. I like the way her face is framed like that with her arm. I like the green color popping out, and I like the way it's framed with those two walls coming in from the side. I think it's a well done image. Colebrook Reservoir. I look at this, and the thing with scenics again for me is the tonal range. It's a little bit flat for me. I'd like to see a little bit more, and I seem to keep saying the same thing, in the sky. I think it needs to be a little more drama or something in the sky. The tree line just goes a little flat. And the other part, if you're going to have that much foreground in a landscape, it needs to tell me something or give me something. And I feel that it's just sort of there. I'd like to see more of a story of it there. I see that there's a little bit of a river going around, but I don't know exactly where you want me to see. I think it just needs a little bit of drama in the lighting or something. The dead stuff in the bush in the front is sort of distracting from everything. And again, I would crop this up to just below the little water line that I see running through it. The interesting thing about landscapes are really hard, and to me, there should be a drama to them. One of the amazing things about Ansel Adams, who obviously was such a master of landscapes, is somebody had a great quote about Ansel in that Ansel Adams didn't shoot landscapes, he shot weather. And what he was doing a lot of times was showing dramatic changes in the weather, which created those wonderful dramatic skies and incredible light on subjects. But that's it for me. I just need a point of view on this, and I just don't know what my point of view should be on this one.
You're correct. Point of view. Okay. So what did the photographer have in mind? You're right. I would cut out the foreground real quick, almost, where maybe those tree stumps are, to just show the stream. Okay. And then back up with a longer lens so that the tree line is more predominant and bigger in the photograph, and that becomes the subject. Okay? Everything else has been said, and next print, please.
Oyster catchers.
I'll start with this one. Your fish, your mind. It's great that the wings are both extended. They're not out of phase. They're in harmony with each other. Both bills are open. The action, the red eye, the shadows that are down there. We know what they're doing. They're hunting for fish, and they see one, and it's a competition, right? Your fish or mine. The fact that they're a little close, well, good. That makes it a little more exciting, the fight. You follow me? They're not separated. They're going after the same thing. I would crop a little off the bottom, okay, to make the shadows, have some room underneath the shadows, but not that much foreground, okay? So you tighten in on it, maybe vignette slightly, you got yourself a winner here. Next.
Oh, I just think it's wonderful. Nothing to really say on this. It's, a very, very gentle slight vignette on something like this. It's not even necessary. If you've heard my lectures and stuff, you know how I love duplication in images, and something like this is just absolutely wonderful. Great caught moment, great image, nothing to add or improve.
That's the end.
Oh,
That's the end.
wonderful. Wow.
A wonderful finish. Thank you.
Okay, please ask questions. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I don't want you to answer it as your answer to this question on basic photography. Okay? Tell me how you think the average photographer would answer this question. Which has more depth of field? A wide angle lens or a telephoto lens? Anybody want to answer? Not if you know the answer. Any comments? How would the average photographer answer that? Say it. What? Thank you, sir. I'm a little hard of hearing, so. Anybody else? Comments? Come on. Yeah, I can hear them. Join in. What do you think? How would they answer it? Okay, yes, they would say wide angle lens. But it's a lie. And it's not telephoto. It's a lie. Watch. They're equal. I'll prove it to you. Here we have a young lady, full length, in front of the camera, and we got something in the background, a barn. And my job is to photograph this young lady full length. So I put a 75 millimeter lens on my camera. I back up until of course we need to run out of ink. I got another one. We always pick the wrong lens because of that belief. And watch what happens. So here's the crop. A little bit of headroom, a little bit of foot room. She's the subject, the most important thing. And that's the size of the barn. Now, if we put a 150 millimeter lens on her, back up until we see the girl full length, the same size on the ground glass, the barn gets bigger. But the depth of field, if the apertures match in both photographs, is exactly the same. When you have two cameras here, the 75 and the 150, this is full length, this is the head and shoulders, this has more depth of field, but it's two different photographs. We don't want a head and shoulders, we want full length. So if you want the barn bigger for balance, you back up with a longer lens at the same aperture, a small aperture, to give you more depth of field if you want it, or less a wider aperture if you don't. But the depth of field is the same. And so many people have been taught that wide-angle lenses have more depth of field. They pick the wrong lens when they photograph something that could have been, like, let me give you an example. I give you an assignment. You go out and photograph 100 soccer players on the bleachers. You say, wow, they go back 15 rows. I need a lot of depth of field. Okay? So I'm going to choose like f11 or f16, good, and I'm going to choose my wide-angle lens. So they move in and crop edge to edge, and they look at the photograph. They got good depth of field. They say, wow, I'm lucky I had the 40 with me. But the people in the front row have big heads, and the people in the back row have little pinheads. They could have backed up with a 150 at the same aperture, cropped it edge to edge, and the people in the front row would have been slightly larger than the people in the back row with the same depth of field. Do I make my point? Okay. So I call that a nugget. That's a little piece of information that, you know, it's kind of a misunderstanding in our profession. Okay? Is there anybody in the audience that photographs people for money? Okay, See, I'm used to talking to wedding and portrait photographers, okay? And here's something that they run into where if they understand, it makes their life much easier. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking pictures of flowers and landscapes, look at the back of the camera on program mode or whatever, and, oh, it's a little off, make, no, a little more, and get the right exposure. Nothing wrong with that, okay? Please ask questions, as we go along. But when you're photographing something with your customer that's paying you, and you have to chimp 5 or 6 times to get the exposure, okay? So I use a handheld meter, especially for difficult situations. I'm going to go through one difficult, and then we're done. Watch. Here's a shade tree. Here's a building in bright sunlight in the background, and we got a bride and groom in the shade. Wow. I got to handle a bright background, put my flash on to brighten the subjects in the shade so that the exposure is correct. I can't change the bright background. So as I walk into the shade, I take my handheld meter and point it this way as if I was at the building pointing back to the light source. Let's say that's F11 or F16 or F11 at 1/250th of a second. Now I go in the shade and I measure incidentally from there to the camera, and it's only 5/6 at 1/250th of a second, apples to apples. Well, I know from, and we can't get into it in 10 minutes, that it takes 4 5/6s to make, excuse me, it was F11 in the background. It takes 4 5/6s to make one F11. God's shade light gave me 1 5/6. So I can add 3 5/6s, okay? We can't get into adding and subtracting. So that's F8.5. I turn my flash on, meter the flash to F8.5 on top of the 5/6 shade light. I got a perfect exposure of the background, the foreground. I don't have to chimp, and it looks more professional. When I'm on vacation and I'm taking landscapes and stuff, I don't need a meter. Look at the back of the camera and make a change. So I'm almost out of time. Thanks for listening. Oh, got any questions? I didn't think I talked that fast. Question? But when you look at the histogram and make a change and look at the histogram, it's your presentation to the customer. Yes, I can do it that way. It's your presentation to the customer who's paying you a lot of money to photograph their wedding. And that's the way they do it. They look at the back of the camera and make a change. I just think it looks, and here's one thing. An incident light meter, it's always accurate. If I take 4 penguins with an all snow background, I'm going to be underexposed if I use the meter in the camera. But why is my meter in my hand always correct? Because it measures the light before it bounces off of anything. It's always the right aperture and shutter speed. So I take a meter reading and I'm done. Do I check the back of the camera once? Yes. You know why? The only mistake you can make with a meter, an incident meter, is you told the meter you wanted it at ASA 100 and you had 400 on your camera. Once you get that right, the information is correct. It's like having an angel on your shoulder giving you the aperture and the shutter speed. Can I do without it? Sure. I think it looks more professional in front of my customer that's paying me money to photograph their wedding, especially in that bright background and people in the shade. You got to go nuts to try to get that to look right. Okay? Any questions before we wrap it up? Thanks for listening. She didn't tell you what happens if you go over. Hello? You got it.
I have to move your board. Okay. Yeah, because I got about a half hour here, so I'll go quick. No, that's okay. Yeah, sure. Be better to see the images. Okay, as a typical New Yorker, I'm gonna talk a little fast. You wanna tell me go when you're ready? Or should I just start? Go, okay. Okay, we've gone over a lot of different rules and things, and of course, the number one rule for taking better pictures, you should be able to figure this one out on your own. But to me, what's the most important element in photographs? And I think in any photograph, it comes down to impact. What is the impact in the picture? And what makes an impactful photograph? I think Ansel Adams said it best when he says it's the 12 inches behind the camera is really the most important thing to make impactful photographs. And for me, I like the term beyond the postcard. I'd like to do things that aren't the average scene, that isn't the scene that you're gonna see if you buy a postcard. I want to see something different. And to me, if it's a postcard image, I may as well buy the postcard. Now, as a commercial photographer, there's a lot of jobs that I got where we talked about a sense of place. This was something I did for Southwest Airlines magazine, Spirit, in the Hamptons, and doing a cover is very difficult because they want to have room for the copy, but most of all, the thing that they want is a sense of place of what the story is about. So this one was very easy. It was at the Hamptons, and this is very typical of what's out there. Sometimes it's very obvious when I'm photographing on locations. I'd like to get something that shows me the name of where I am, the title of it, so to speak, Frank. And there's a lot of iconic things. You know, if in New York you shoot the icons like the Chrysler Building, the clock at Grand Central, water towers, taxis, and again, repeated patterns, filling the frame. I'll talk about that. There's some things to me where you photograph, they are the postcard. What else can you do to it? And I like to manipulate and play to get something that's a little bit different. Now, if you're in Paris and doing the Eiffel Tower, and this was years ago before the lighting became copyrighted and you can't license images of the Eiffel Tower at night, but this is pre that. But this is the one that everybody's going to get. How do you photograph it differently for a story to tell that isn't the same old view? Sometimes you don't have to show the entire object to have it read. In this case, you know you're in Paris, and you know that's the Eiffel Tower. I don't have to show it stem to stern to tell the story. I also like going sometimes to the souvenir shops. I can tell the story that way without the subject itself. Now, one of the things I really love about digital these days is there's images possible today because of technology that we weren't able to get in the film days. And that's a very exciting thing for me. Some of the technology is mechanical because of our cameras and what they can do, and some of it is digital. One of the things that I really, really love, and I know I talked to somebody earlier today. I've talked to people who were assistants and great photographers of their own, like Chris Rainier, who's a National Geo photographer who assisted Ansel Adams, and said, yeah, Ansel would have been all over digital because of the way you could remap the tones in an image. And beyond black and white, we can also change the color temperatures. So in Tuscany, at one of my workshops, this was the capture that I had just straight out of the camera. This is what it looked like. Remapped these days, this is the result. And it's remapping the raw tones in the image into something else, into what I really want to see. This is another view in Tuscany, and of course I enhanced that and even went further, because I go really far these days, and added a lot of texture. The other thing, in Tuscany especially, I'm shooting like this, and it's very neutral, and that's what I'm going to get. But the feeling and mood in Tuscany is to change the color temperature to make it warm, because this invokes the feeling in the sun of what Tuscany is, I think. And again, I'll do a lot of manipulation. In this one, I'm adding a lot of a lot of texture in the image. But there's images like this that are mechanically possible because of the technology in my hand today. This in the film days I wouldn't have been able to capture. This was done with a 50mm 1.2 shot at 1.2. This is in Seoul, Korea. It was the Lotus Lantern Festival. ISO 1600, which I'll go even past 1600 these days. This was an older digital camera. And autofocus, which I didn't like when I started because I'm a photographer, I can focus. But as I get older, I find out that it becomes more and more critical because of what my eyes are doing, and the technology is so much better. Another thing is I like doing shots like this. This is in Africa. This is road shots, and this is possible because of autofocus and auto ISO. In the film days, I would miss some of these shots. We're going along the road at like 40, 50 miles an hour, and I'm shooting outside a window and catching snippets. And I love doing this. And I would miss half of them in the old days because the exposure was off.
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in a half hour. Please note that the computers will be shutting down in about 15 minutes. Please save all your work.
Okay, put that back on my timer. We also call this drive-by shots, and it's shots like this that I wouldn't be able to get. Now these days I can get 90% of these to be the correct exposure and the correct focus. I mean, I love this because the bike is caught just at the right moment on the side. All this happens instantly. You can see I'm elevated because I'm in a higher vehicle. This is in the Philippines as we're going through a town. We're not stopping to photograph this. I'm doing this through the car window. These are some more. I did some things in Indonesia for the Ministry of Tourism, and a lot of these are just grab shots as we're going by. This one I didn't even know I had until later, because we're just zipping through towns to get it. The moment on this with the boy framed on the right by that, and the little girl running and the kids in the background, there's no time to set this up. This is just instant shots that I get. And to me, it's because of the technology. We talked about perspective and lens choices, and again, if you're doing scenics like this, a long lens is going to compress the scene, which is what I want to do in things like this. This is in northern Israel, and again, I'm going to pull out my 400 millimeter because I want to compress all of these images together, all of these towns together, all of those buildings together. Same thing here in Siena. And this is just an example in Indonesia. The guy was coming at us with a longer lens, and as he gets closer, I'm going wider. And as I go wider, it accentuates that quite a bit. So you can see the difference between, I'll go quickly, 100 millimeter and 30 millimeter. This is another one in Kusadasi in Turkey, the library there, famous building. To me, this is a postcard shot. This is what everybody's going to do. So what can I get differently? I'm going to pull out an extreme wide angle and shoot this, and it's creating a lot of leading lines. And the interesting thing with an extreme wide angle is you get the clouds coming in like that to give you those leading lines into the image, something a little bit different. That happens with skies a lot. When you go to an extreme wide angle, you'll see the clouds coming in like that. So one question I always like to ask is, how do you see the world? Do you see things with telephoto or wide angle? Do you see the entire crowd of people, or will you focus in on one person? Will you just zoom in on a pagoda in a scene, or will you pull back to show the environment? And I find people tend to go one way or the other. I tend to go very much telephoto. I like little snippets. So in China, we came across these fishermen. They fish with the birds. And this is a pretty ugly shot. I mean, there's a lot of bird crap everywhere. The guy smoking a cigarette. There's really nothing interesting here. This is pretty much a failure. So even though I tend to zoom in on things like that, I immediately pulled back, and the color was terrible because of the smog. The quality of the air there is terrible. 5 seconds? Okay, so this is just another view of that. I just want to get to Border Patrol, so let me just get to that on the last thing, because I talked so much about it on. Wow, that was a quick 10 minutes. Let me keep going here. Let me just get to this point, because we talked so much about things like Border Patrol, and I would like to show that. Here, let's see if I can do this part of it quickly. Okay. I like to isolate to tell the story sometimes. So this is one of the grab shots from the road, and I'll crop in, and I'll crop in even more. What is the story? And these are other ones from things like that, where I'm cropping in to get the shot. And what I mean by Border Patrol is not pretty borders on images, but here's a shot in the Philippines. I'm in a vehicle. Obviously, this is just happening very quickly. This is the original capture. And if you can see, there's a pole on the left, and there's two bright spots on the top. And I want to eliminate that from the shot. picture like this, a lot of photographers want to include the area on the right because it continues and you see where you are, but to me it's distracting, where if I crop that out, it keeps me in the shot, and I think is just much more dramatic. When you get rid of things like skies sometimes, it's just visually distracting in images. I guess I'm out of time. One very last thing. Well, it's not much. It's an ad. There were so many good spots on light and stuff, but I knew it was going to be quick. Just if anybody is interested, I do have 2 photo tours coming up. One in Portugal and one in Miramar, and I have some flyers for that if anybody's interested. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it.